Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. Freemasonry and Satanism. What do those two things have in common? Freemasonry and Satanism. Well, would you consider that Satanism is the same as Lucifer worship? Lucifer being the light bearer and get initiated into the secrets, being illuminated, the light bearer, Lucifer equals Satan, Satanism. What does that have to do with Freemasonry? Apparently Albert Pike, in his big thick book, Morals and Dogma, declares Lucifer to be the light bearer, the shining deity for reality, our world, their deity. You think it's the same thing as believing in Jesus and God? And what does it have to do with the current pursuit of a global world order, apparently in league with Israel, Zionism, and many Jewish people, apparently even Christian Zionists, everybody looking forward to Israel and the Jews and the Zionists and the Freemasons. Remember, the Freemasons are builders. The Illuminati, the banksters, or the financiers, all wanting to rebuild King Solomon's temple. Big news. Apparently in some declaration of a global world order, global world currency, global world religion. Is all of those words Satanism, Freemasonry, Illuminati, Zionism, banksters, Kabbalism, and all of that related? It seems like it is. And this is going to be probably a multi-part book review because it's going to take a little time. I've been reading this book, The Jewish State, by a hero to the Jews, one of those individuals responsible for bringing about the state of Israel today, in the making for a couple hundred years. And what was the obstacle? Why they couldn't get it sooner? Well, it was the Ottoman Empire operating out of Turkey. And just like, you had the Europeans and Britain and Germany and America and other countries, France, etc., Spain. Turkey had the Ottoman Empire, had control of the entire Middle East. And apparently the Jews, the people who wanted to rebuild King Solomon's temple, who wanted their own homeland, felt that or knew that Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, was an obstacle. So how do you destroy an empire? Well, you have a world war. And what if it doesn't work after one world war? You have two world wars. And then after two world wars, you get your country, state of Israel. What if things are not moving along fast enough? You want to accelerate the program. Well, then you have 911. And in between, you have a lot of countries destroyed, overthrown, go through bankruptcy. Slow, painstaking plans executed, assassinations to take over all the countries all over the world. Is that a reality? Or am I just imagining it all? So anyways, this book was written by one of the heroes for Israel today, the Zionist Jewish folks, Theodor Herzl, the Jewish state. And apparently that flag for Israel has the six-pointed star you can see in the middle. And apparently the blue line on the top and the blue line on the bottom is meant one of the symbols is the ancient lines for the ancient kingdom of Judea, which extended from the Iraqi Euphrates down to the Egyptian Nile. So they have plans for a greater Israel. All this has been going on for a couple hundred years. World War I, World War II, French Revolution, Russian Revolution, Chinese Revolution, taking over governments, banking systems, controlling the USA money supply since 1913. They did control it in the early 1800s, but lost control. The congressmen and House of Representatives and the presidents of the United States were wise to this outside control of our nation and the money supply. So around 1850, they lost control. And I believe Abraham Lincoln wanted to have America print its own money. Hence, he was assassinated. And President John Kennedy, in his famous speech, said, "Secret societies are repugnant to the American way of life, and I intend to expose it." He was assassinated, etc., etc., etc. There's been a lot of death involved and suffering to bring about the Jewish state with the six-pointed star, Theodor Herzl, and the property lines from the Iraqi Euphrates to the Egyptian Nile, all in this book, which I will read from. I've been reading it for the past couple days. But what do people really know? What do people know about the six-pointed star? So I think I'll just start out with this video with the basics. No better place to start than the basics. So we'll start out with the religion of the Jewish people, the traditional religion, and what that has meant to the rest of us. So one place I'm going to start is the Encyclopedia Judaica. The 1973 edition, published in Israel. This is J through L, which means it has K in it. Big, thick book. You can hardly hold it up. It's so heavy. And the topic I want to talk about is the Kabbalah. And I made videos on this, as you can see down there. 105 Part 2. But I just want to make a quick point. The Kabbalah. Israeli-produced Encyclopedia Judaica, the encyclopedia in English of the Jewish people. Probably the first time you could get this kind of information in English, this much. And apparently, some peoples, as you're going to hear me say sooner or later here in this video, some peoples just don't think the rest of us are bright enough to go get a book like this and read it. And think. Imagine that. Somebody must think that we're animals and monkeys, brain-dead zombies. You think. You think I'm kidding. It's in the books here. Introduction. General notes. Kabbalah is the traditional and most commonly used term for the esoteric teachings. What's esoteric? That's like witchcraft. Secret, mystical teachings. And it says it here. Commonly used for the esoteric teachings of Judaism. Plain out says it. Doesn't say some Jews. It says Judaism. So just like Christianity is the belief in Jesus Christ and the teachings in the New Testament, which we can clearly understand and read, we can also understand here in this book, Kabbalah is the traditional and most commonly used term for the esoteric teachings of Judaism for Jewish mysticism. Mysticism is the same things as magicians, sorcerers, witchcraft. Especially the forms which it assumed in the Middle Ages from about the 12th century onward. The 12th century onward? And what happened after that? When did they have the inquisitions and the burnings of all the witches? In its wider sense, it signifies all the successive esoteric movements in Judaism that evolved from the end of the period of the Second Temple and became active factors in the history of Israel. And if you've been watching my videos, you know that we now have a coin, or I should say Israel is producing a coin, with President Donald Trump's head on it, and also King Cyrus, who was responsible for enabling and assisting the Jewish people back then for rebuilding King Solomon's temple the second time. The coin is called a shekel. So apparently when they rebuild the King Solomon's temple for the third time, for this mysticism, esoteric religion called Kabbalism, and there's several books like the Talmud and the Zohar, and they're involved in alchemy, in other words, for witchcraft, sorcery, magicians, natural science. And that's all it is. If you understand the physics involved, whether you call it quantum physics, communicating with interdimensional beings and learning how to control the human brain and even kill people, take over countries and industrial areas and natural resources, diamond mines, gold mines. Oh my, if you could use witchcraft and magic and Kabbalah and sorcery to attain those goals, and you're into banking and bribery and very manipulative, taking over countries, I guess you'd wind up where we are today. In its wider sense, it signifies all the successive esoteric movements in Judaism that evolved from the end of the period of the Second Temple and became active factors in the history of Israel. So they called their nation Israel for the past few hundred years, even though they didn't have an actual physical homeland. They were a group of people that were tightly knitted together and even forced to be together by all kinds of coercion and other things, creating anti-Semitism, so that the stragglers, or the people who wanted to just get along, like Rodney King said, can't we all just get along? But they didn't want them to just get along and assimilate and integrate. They wanted to keep it separate. And they had this particular religion called the Kabbalah. Kabbalah is a unique phenomenon. It says it right here in plain English. It is a unique phenomenon. So we can say these people, Judaism, as it says here, and their traditional culture is a phenomenon, unique phenomenon, and should not generally be equated with what is known in history of religion as mysticism. But they just called it mysticism. It is mysticism, in fact. I suppose I better read that again. Kabbalah is a unique phenomenon and should not generally be equated with what is known in history of religion as mysticism. And the next sentence says, it is mysticism. In fact, but at the same time, it is both exotericism and theosophy. So you're mixing this secret witchcraft sorcery with some kind of theosophy, some kind of religion. In what sense it may be called mysticism depends on the definition of the term, a matter of dispute among scholars. If the term is restricted to the profound yearning for direct human communion with God, okay, what God? Through annihilation of individuality. Annihilation of individuality. That sounds like a lot of those secret societies where people get initiated into them. They have to give up their own separate personal will. I've gone over some of those books on getting initiated into the Rosicrucians and other organizations. And Hasidic terminology, then only a few manifestations of Kabbalah can be designated as such, because few Kabbalists sought this goal. let alone formulated it openly as their final aim. However, Kabbalah may be considered mysticism insofar that it seeks an apprehension of God, creation with intrinsic elements are beyond the grasp of the intellect. Although this is seldom explicitly belittled or rejected by the Kabbalah, especially those elements when were perceived through contemplation and illumination, i.e. the Illuminati. So that's all I'm going to read there. I'm just going to say, at this point, there's little doubt in my mind, generally speaking, that the cultural religion or cultural beliefs, historically, and practices and rituals were Kabbalistic. And a couple other associated books are the Zohar and the Talmud and then some other books. Okay, so I was thinking about that. And I went to the pharmacy to get some pictures because on the front of this book here is the six-pointed star. So when I read from this book, in Theodor Herzl's own words, I want to get an idea of these people's religion. Because if we don't understand their religion, we probably can't understand the other situation, why they couldn't get along with everybody else. If it is some kind of demonic worship, some kind of beings that maybe the rest of us would reject, that could probably explain the problem. Is that the case? The six-pointed star is on the Israeli flag and many other places. And basically, fundamentally, their religion is the Kabbalah. So bear with me while I painstakingly go through this stuff inch by inch, because I think that's the only way we can understand. Let's get to the bottom of the issue. So I went on Yahoo image site and I put in the Kabbalah. Simple as that. And I noticed on the front of the book and the Israeli flag is the six-pointed star. Simple as that. What does that six-pointed star mean? Commonly used to represent the Jewish people. Apparently it also represents some deity named Rephaim, some kind of demon god Rephaim. I'll see if I have the pictures for him. But anyways, when I looked up Kabbalah, here are some of the pictures. You can see the amulet you wear around your neck, six-pointed star. In this picture on the Yahoo image site, under the topic Kabbalah, Kabbalah. And over on the right there, you see that lady sitting in some kind of double triangle on both sides. And then you see the Sephiroth, the tree of life. And then you see a ring with a Hebrew symbol on it. So let's talk about the lady sitting in the two pyramids. Something called a Merkabah. And if you watch Barbara Marciniak videos on YouTube or read her books, The Bringers of the Dawn, get it? Bringers of the Dawn, the light bearer, Lucifer. Barbara Marciniak, I made videos on her books. But anyways, that lady is sitting in a Merkabah. And apparently a Merkabah, when it turns, rotates, takes a person into another dimension. A Merkabah. And Barbara Marciniak is a channeler, apparently channeling the Palladians. A Merkabah. And she shows Merkabah, small ones you hold in your hand and you spin it around. And apparently it enables you to go into a trance and communicating with the beings that are all around us. The Merkabah. The six-pointed star is a representation of the Merkabah communicating with another dimension. Okay, more pictures. Six-pointed star, triangle. These circles are meant to represent, from the best understanding as I can, bypass or by an abyss, nothing, and all time and eternity. So these spheres are supposed to be other dimensions. It says here, base and a base, nothing and all time eternity, eternal nature, power and wisdom of the occult. So anyways, we see another representation of the six-pointed star on the top. We see another six-pointed star with the serpent eating its tail, and the crown, meaning representing the serpent being the king. With the six-pointed star, even the swastika in there. You get it? Got it? A representation of the Sephiroth with the owl, Moloch, like in the Bohemian Grove in California, that the elites throw a baby into the fire, called the cremation of care, or the Washington, D.C. street design, Moloch, or a little owl perched on the $1 bill on one of the ones, Moloch. Or the bull or the owl with the six-pointed star on it that they worship. See the fire in the bottom of this bull? Moloch. They feed sacrifices to Moloch. Six-pointed star, the bull, the pit on the bottom, Moloch. Six-pointed star on the Israeli flag. The Merkabah, interdimensional communication. Moloch sacrificing individuals to these deities. Here was a surprise to me on this picture. The 7 candlestick holder called the menorah, which now they put on the front lawn of the White House during Christmas. And they're doing away with the Christian symbols, and they're bringing us the menorah. So what does the menorah say? World of emanation, world of creation, world of formation, world of action and elements. And on the top it has the Benai, the Keter, the Hafmah, the house, different levels, dimensions, the spheres on the Sephiroth, the tree of life. I've been trying to get a clear picture in my mind what the menorah represents, and this picture popped up. And I said, aha! So the Kabbalah symbols is what is being put on the front house of the front lawn of the White House and on the shopping store windows during Christmas time, replacing the Christian symbols. The menorah, apparently, another Kabbalah symbol. Also, don't forget, Moloch, the fire, sacrificing six-pointed star. The Sephiroth, all this stuff into astrology and the symbols and codes and even maybe even hand reading and the tarot cards, all these dimensions. This one was interesting because they use the pentagram, like the Pentagon, the military arm of the world right now in the United States, and these numbers, so some kind of magic symbols, more magic symbols, the Hebrew letters, the symbols for the planets, all these alignments, astrology. This was an interesting picture here. The Sephiroth is apparently the 10 different spheres or pathways to God. And apparently there's a good pathway and an evil pathway. through the Sephiroth. If you start at the bottom, maybe the underworld, and move up to the next sphere, which would be Earth, and slowly go up all the spheres to the crown, the Creator, as you can see here. But what's odd about this one, I've never seen a Sephiroth more than 10 spheres. This says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 16, 17, 18, 19, 22, 24, 26 different spheres that you would meditate on and maybe travel to. Tree of emanation, tree of creation, tree of formation, tree of making, body, psyche, spirit, divine. So we're learning a little bit about the religion of the Jews, which we should if we're going to find, believe that these people are in bed with President Donald Trump and all the banksters and the elites, and they're going to be in control of the world when they bring us this global world order. Maybe we should learn a little bit about them. You think? Is that fair enough? Or would that be considered an anti-Semitic pursuit to try to find out the religion that they plan on bringing the world? And in some ways, they have brought it to the world, these Sephiroths. So they're quite interesting if you look at them. You can go on Yahoo Image Site and find these pictures, and you can click the link on each picture and get the details. But keep a mind now that in mind, discernment and thinking, don't believe everything you read. So they got the deity as the highest crown, and on the bottom, the Sephiroth, Isod, the foundation, symbols for the planets, all these paths of different spheres up to the monad, the higher entity. And apparently the human body with the chakra systems is another symbol for the Sephiroth, or higher spheres, to reach the higher dimensions. The four worlds of Kabbalah. So I was trying to focus on the six-pointed star on the Israeli flag. And there you go. Leonardo da Vinci's symbols over the man. Six-pointed star. Multi-dimension, emanations, creation, spirit world, spirit beings. The Vesica, Pisces, the Mandora and fish symbols with the pyramid, the dove. You see these symbols everywhere. So again, I've got a long ways to go here in my understanding. We see these symbols a lot in this picture. Too bad this camera's not zooming as quick as I'd like it to. Angelic, Enochian, Kabbalistic, Hermetic symbols, Hermetic, alchemy. Another thing that's interesting, the Book of Enoch. You ever read that? I made videos on that book quite a bit. But apparently, when Enoch was being taken up to go to God's kingdom, the 1/3 of the angels that were cast out of heaven, I guess cast down here to earth or the underworld, pleaded with Enoch to plead their case before God and have them released. And when Enoch made it to heaven and started to plead for these fallen angels, as they had requested of him, God said, "I'm having nothing of this. I will not hear their case." Did you know that? So apparently, these fallen angels are part of the Kabbalah tree of life, in my opinion. the beings maybe that are watching us or in control of the planet through these different people into the secret mystery religions and secret societies and organizations, mystery religion of Babylon, Kabbalah, Rosicrucian, etc., Freemasonry, Golden Dawn, Knights of Columbus, Knights of Malta. There's thousands of these secret societies, and you'll see all the symbols like those two columns on this picture under the eye, the same thing you see in front of the Freemasonic lodges. The Kabbalah Tree of Life pendant. A lot of people purchase these, are into this. Interestingly enough, I have some other information here, but apparently President Donald Trump was into the Kabbalah. Apparently his ex-wife was into the Kabbalah. There's plenty of information I have. And apparently it's part of the Jewish culture. Codex Magica. We've seen the serpent eating its tail. This is text Mars, so it has everything to do with secret signs, mysterious symbols, hidden codes of the Illuminati. So another picture here with the menorah, now quite often shown during Christmas time, as well as the other symbols for the Jewish religion. And you can see the Tree of Life and the 7 candlestick menorah. Again, I was trying to put 2 and 2 together and understand it. So, what we can say for sure, it does involve the reptilians, the 6-pointed star, and the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 symbols, 7 symbols with 1 in the middle. Apparently different symbols for the different planets. So what's the connection here with the 6-pointed star, the reptilian beings, and the symbols for the planets, and the moon and the sun? What is this telling us? What is this telling us? And if you look at a Freemasonic building, you'll see those columns out front. Joachim and Bones, they say it. So definitely the Freemasons are tied in with the Kabbalah. And it's admitted, I've gone over morals and dogma, made many videos. I'll be going over it again. I'm accumulating more knowledge bit by bit. The wings on the top, the columns, that being. Looks kind of interesting character. Anatomy of the occultist, it says on the bottom. Severity and mercy on the columns. Oh my. You suppose this new global world order religion is going to be a good thing for we the people? Apparently it is tied in with the secret passage in the United States, what, 1991? The passage of the Noahide laws, which apparently recently, the Sanhedrin, the religious government Congress of Israel, the Jewish people worldwide, has requested that the Washington government and to President Donald Trump to start enforcing the Noahide laws. And apparently, if you believe in a false deity, that's called heresy. You'd be accused of being a heretic, and that's punishable by beheading. And this is part of the Kabbalah religion, with the eye, the rays, and all these symbols, and the 5-sided pentagon or pentagram, like the building in New York, where all the military operates out of. So it is kind of connected. It has everything to do with the brain, probably the right brain, the spiritual side of your head that communicates with the upper world. And ironically, they put fluoride in the water, which calcifies our brains, which apparently disables our ability to communicate with the higher world, use our psychic and telepathic, and Lord knows what else kind of higher functions or abilities. So apparently that's intentional. They don't want us to do that. So these are pictures I found at the Kabbalah Yahoo image site with the wings and the circle above there and the serpents. So we do notice a lot of common denominators here under the pictures of the Kabbalah. I've explained what the Merkabah is with Barbara Marciniak and many other people, including, you can look it up in the Encyclopedia Judaica or other encyclopedias if you can get the facts. But apparently the Merkabah is some kind of device, even made out of a stone in some situations. That's two inverted pyramids, and if you turn it around and focus your mind on it, it helps you enter another dimension, whether it's just physical or spiritual transformation or communication. And you can kind of get a better picture of this if you know what you're looking at when you see all these spheres. The different dimensions that these people can communicate with or travel to. Is this true? On front of your Freemasonic lodges all over the world, all over the United States, to every town and every city, you'll see the double-headed bird, and you notice the crown. And this was on the Yahoo search for Kabbalah search results. Again, the six-pointed star. So like I said, this is going to take me a while to read from the book, and I'm going to take a pause every now and then and look at more pictures and more pictures to try to get a good handle on what we're talking about when we're talking about the six-pointed star on the Israeli flag, the Jewish state, Theodor Herzl, and apparently the historic culture of the Jews was the Kabbalah. And admitted in this book, wherever the Jews went, they never could get along with anybody else. So were they into some kind of... I made a book review on this book. This is by Tex Mars, The Holy Serpent of the Jews, Series 91. The Rabbi's Secret Plan for Satan to Crush Their Enemies and Vault the Jews to Global Dominion. Series 91 in my series. Tex Mars is a well-respected author, has a website, has many CDs, lectures, videos on YouTube, books you can buy at his website. He even said the CIA or FBI came to his office once, and he invited him in and said, "Sit down, what can I do for you?" So they were looking at him, but apparently he was in such a position that he was maybe just not somebody they could intimidate. He was, I think, a retired Air Force officer, Tex Mars. And you have another one here. The New World Order Keystone, the Holocaust Dogma of Judaism. And you see that symbol that's stabbing the earth on this picture? That's a 6. And ironically, if you look at Monster Drink, there's 3 of those on the can. 666. So apparently they created this Holocaust dogma, like some kind of religion, out of saying so many Jews were killed during World War II, when apparently, according to my research, there's a whole lot more than this going on before and after World War II. Before World War II, in the newspapers, the Jews were publishing everywhere that 6 million Jews in Europe were in danger for their lives before the war. So somebody came up with the idea after the war to create some kind of guilt complex and make a religion out of this, according to these books, series number 90. And a man before his time, Henry Ford, the automaker, purchased some newspapers. The Dearborn Independent, I have several editions of them here. Because he wanted to get the word out about all of the Yiddish Jewish people after World War I that were being imported into New York and the United States and were acting like they owned the place. They were financed and they were put in barracks all over Europe and trained on how to behave and speak a little English before they got here. And one of their pursuits was to purchase up businesses all over the country, and they probably had unlimited funds. Remember, the Illuminati, banksters, the Zionist Jewish elite controlled the USA money supply since 1913. So these people would have had a blank check to buy all the farmlands and baseball concessions and breweries and publishing and create the porn industry and Hollywood and so much more, the medical establishment, pharmaceuticals. Kind of crazy when you think about it. Henry Ford, the automaker, risked his business and his reputation and everything purchasing a newspaper, trying to get the word out. So I could go on with the sidebars here, but I want to start reading from the book on this first video for about this book, with the Israeli flag on the front and the six-pointed star. Theodor Herzl, interestingly enough, he wrote this book in 1896, just before 1900. So there was a plan. It's in this book. They had a lot to accomplish. Turkey was in the way, which was the main headquarters for the Ottoman Empire that controlled the Middle East, which was prohibiting them from acquiring, even with money, the Palestinians' lands. So they had to have World War I and World War II and so much more to take Turkey down in the Middle East. A lot of people don't know what World War I and World War II were really all about. And apparently in World War I, for example, President Taft, prior to President Woodrow Wilson, would not go along with the coercion or the agitation. They were pressuring him to help them accomplish this task of creating a homeland, as described in this book in 1896. And the Jewish Congress for Zionism had existed for about 300 years, actually since 1776 or before, the same year that the United States declared independence from Britain, and that's tied into this story. So the United States was intended to be the huge military enforcer for taking over the world, and it looks like they are pretty much done that. They do have a small problem, and that is a lot of we the people, citizens in the USA and the world, would probably get in the way. So apparently there has to be some kind of mechanism to have surveillance over everybody, and some kind of mechanism automated, not the old-fashioned way of knocking on the door or breaking down the door and machine gunning everybody. There needs to be something more advanced and technological. Might be like computer recognition systems and monitoring, computer beast, smart meters, smart phones, things that listen to everybody, collecting data, metadata, cataloging all of us. So whenever they do what they're going to do with the enforcement of even the Noahide laws, which may declare that Christianity was a false religion, and anybody who believes in it would be considered a heresy, going against this Kabbalistic world religion, and maybe they would punish those people with beheading. And there seems to be a lot of evidence to show that that seems to be the case. You can look on the internet, and apparently the governments have purchased 30,000 guillotines. There's FEMA camps all around the country, fields and fields of coffins. In 2015, they had the Jade Helm exercises. You can look all this up if you don't know. And you'd be surprised how many people don't know about these things. Tanks and trucks and UN, United Nations equipment in small towns going door to door with military exercises, like what they did in Katrina, like what they did in the Boston bombing, door to door. they're testing all of this, including AI, artificial intelligence. And then with the installation of all the microwave transmission systems, smart meters, who knows what kind of weaponized system they have, some kind of beast system. Are we all in trouble? Is all this real? Is this part of the religion? Can you find on the internet the Bohemian Grove where Alex Jones snuck in there with a cameraman and videoed the ritual where they photographs of our leaders like Bush and Kissinger and so many others, Reagan, photographed at the Bohemian Grove in California with the giant owl, with the fire, throwing the baby in the fire, dressed apparently naked in long robes with some kind of homosexual sexual ritual part of this whole thing. Insane, you think. But you can look it up and verify it. It's unbelievable. So anyways, in this book, you got the introduction, the Jewish questions, the Jewish company, the local groups, the Society of Jews and the Jewish state, and the conclusion. And this was in 1896. And you notice it doesn't say just some Jews. And in all of this it doesn't, but because they have the rest of us so much on the edge about being accused of anti-Semitism, we're not allowed to talk about this. But even about the guy who wrote the plans, it's even in the Encyclopedia Judaica I just showed you. All this is verifiable in his own words. My question is, should we read his words? Should we understand the mind of the people who are about to control the world? Well, who do control the world right now for all practical purposes, according to several presidents of Israel. I've showed those video clips of those guys and all these books. I have another stack of books over here. I could keep on going before I even look at this book. But I've decided to make several videos out of this book and try to squeak in as much information as I can to understand who these people are who seem to have a good grasp of our world, control of it. So according to Theodor Herzl, and you know I highlight when I read, it is astonishing how little insight into the science of economics many of the men who move in the midst of active life possess. Shall I read that again? It is astonishing how little insight into the science of economics many of the men who move in the midst of active life possess. So they're saying, generally speaking, a lot of men don't understand the science of economics. That's his first sentence. And I think when it comes right down to it, the most of us, non-Jewish people, particularly Christians, we believe in treating people fairly. And we don't understand the science of intentional cheating other people or squeezing all that we can out of other people. It's not part of the Christian culture or teachings. Period. But is that the truth to be said about that, about the Talmud and the Kabbalah? I mean, what about these people who are into sorcery and witchcraft? That doesn't seem to be equitable or treating people fairly if you understand witchcraft and natural science, sorcery. Something wrong there. That would not be conducive to Christianity. Christianity actually forbids that. So Christianity forbids the Kabbalah. If you think about it, Christianity forbids divination and all this stuff. Even in Revelation 2.9, 3.9, it says there, Jews who call themselves Jews but are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. So what is the synagogue of Satan? Why, after Sandy Hook, did this guy hold up a picture of the owl, Moloch? Hence it is that even Jews faithfully repeat the cry of the anti-Semites. The second sentence. So even Jews faithfully repeat the cry of anti-Semites. We depend for sustenance on the nations who are our host. So 2,000 years ago, after the crucifixion of Jesus and some other activities, the Jews were dispersed all over the world, not allowed to reside in their Judea or Jerusalem. Apparently done by the people who controlled the world, Rome, Caesar. Even at one time, they were taken into captivity in Babylon. And that was in the book of Jeremiah in the Old Testament that I made recently. Series 250. 250. And it said in there, in Jeremiah in the Old Testament, that the Lord instructed Jeremiah that this was going to happen, instructed the king of Babylon to do this, to punish the Jewish people, the Hebrew people, for worshiping the cow god, Moloch. The Eye of Moloch. It's on the back of the dollar bill, according to this picture, if that's what it is. Washington, D.C. Street plan. See the owl? Moloch. Bohemian Grove. An owl on the front of the dollar bill. A lot of the Masonic organizations have an owl. Spiders come not here. Weaving spiders come not here. So basically they don't want we the people to be asking these questions or understanding what I'm talking about. There's the dollar bill. There's the owl. Moloch. Moloch. It's a religion. Apparently, it's in practice today. Okay, back to the book. We depend for sustenance on the nations who are our host. So the Jews were dispersed all over the world, not allowed to have their own homeland. And they're saying they were depending on the nations where they went to for their sustenance. And if we had no host to support us, if we had no host to support us, so if we had no country who would support us, we should die of starvation. In many countries, after the Jews were kicked out of one country, exiled or banished, another country welcomed them. But after a period of time, they caused problems, and I don't know if it was because of the Kabbalah. It seems likely. That's why they were exiled from Spain in the 1500s. And that's how the Jesuits were created, were these Jewish people who did not want to leave Spain, so they converted to Christianity. But apparently in name only, and they were called conversos or moranos. And sometimes they were still practicing the Kabbalah, sorcery, their rituals. And so some of them were apprehended. Ignatius Loyola, one person, and he was taken to see the Pope. But remember, these people controlled the banking systems, and probably the Vatican owed them a lot of money. And after Ignatius Loyola left the Pope's chambers, the Jesuits were created to be the enforcers of Christianity for the church. And the assassins, and they had a black Pope, which apparently was at a higher level than the Pope we all see. So somehow back then, apparently, the Vatican was taken over by these people. Anyways, but what are the true grounds for this statement? This is a point that shows just how unjust accusations may weaken our self-knowledge. But what are the true grounds for this statement concerning the nations that act as host? Where is it not based on limited psychocratic views? Where it is not based on limited psychocratic views, it is founded on the childish era that commodities pass from hand to hand in continuous rotation. Remember, this is Theodor Herzl, 1896, and writing a book about creating the Jewish state. So he's trying to paint a picture of the dilemma that was going on back then. We need not wake from long slumber like Rip Van Winkle to realize that the world is considerably altered by the productions of new commodities. The technical progress made during this wonderful era enables even a man of the most limited intelligence to note with his short-sighted eyes the appearance of new commodities all around him. The spirit of enterprise has created them. So Theodor Herzl was an educated man, came from a wealthy family, and he could observe that the world was changing, and he was aware of the plight of the Jewish people. I'll call it that. They called it the Jewish problem. And he was sizing up the situation, as it says in this book. Labor without enterprise is the stationary labor of ancient days, and typical of it is the work of the husbandman, that would be the farmer, who stands now just where his progenitors stood 1,000 years ago. All our material welfare has been brought about by men of enterprise. I feel almost ashamed of writing down so trite a remark. Even if we were a nation of entrepreneurs, such as absurdly exaggerated accounts make us out to be, better read that again. Even if we were a nation of entrepreneurs, he's talking about the Jewish people, such as absurdly exaggerated accounts make us out to be, we should not require another nation to live on. We do not depend on the circulation of old commodities because we produce new ones. The world possesses slaves of extraordinary capacity for work. That was an interesting sentence. The world possesses slaves of extraordinary capacity for work, whose appearance has been fatal to the production of handmade goods. These slaves are the machines. So Theodor Herzl back then is realizing the potential for machines to manufacture goods and get even farming done rather than human labor. It is true that workmen are required to set machinery in motion, but for this we have men in plenty, of superabundance. Only those who are ignorant of the conditions of Jews in many countries of Eastern Europe would venture to assert that Jews are either unfit or unwilling to perform manual labor. So apparently he's acknowledging here that a long time ago there were problems with the Jews were having in Eastern Europe, Russia, Poland, Germany, Eastern Europe. So it didn't start with Hitler, didn't start with World War II. Remember, World War II was World War II. It wasn't World War I, which had nothing to do with Hitler. So what was that all about? I've told the story many times. We'll get to it again and again and again. But I do not wish to take up the cudgels for the Jews in this pamphlet. So he doesn't want to take up the battle for the Jews in this pamphlet. It would be useless, he says. Everything rational and everything sentimental that can possibly be said in their defense has been said already. If one's hearers are incapable of comprehending them, one is a preacher in the desert. And if one's hearers are broad and high-minded enough to have grasped them already, then his sermon is superfluous. I believe in the ascent of man to higher and yet higher grades of civilization, but I consider this ascent to be desperately slow. So apparently with this global world order and apparently the ongoing attempt, or process I should say, of depopulating the planet, destroying fish, the oceans, the waterways, the trees and the plants, and genetically modified foods and pesticides and herbicides. Apparently, one video was mentioning that they believe there's probably 1 million people dying a day. So there is a process of depopulation going on, apparently. And he says the ascent to this higher grades of civilization is desperately slow, and this is 1896. Were we to wait until the average humanity had become as charitably inclined as was Lessing when he wrote Nathan the Wise, we should wait beyond our day, beyond the days of our children, and our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren, but the world's spirit comes to our aid in another way. This century has given the world a wonderful renaissance by means of its technical achievements. But at the same time, its miraculous improvements have not been employed in the service of humanity. Distance has ceased to be an obstacle, yet we complained of insufficient space. Our great steamships carry us swiftly and surely over hitherto unvisited seas. Our railways carry us safely into the mountain world, hitherto trembling, scaled on foot. Events occurring in countries undiscovered when Europe confined the Jews in ghettos are known to us in the course of an hour. Hence the misery of the Jews is an anachronism, not because there was a period of enlightenment 100 years ago, for that enlightenment reached in reality only the choicest spirits. I believe that electric light was not invented for the purpose of illuminating the drawing rooms of a few snobs, but rather for the purpose of throwing light on some of the dark problems of humanity. One of these problems, and not the least of them, is the Jewish question. In solving it, we are working not only for ourselves, but also for many other overburdened and oppressed beings. So he's acknowledging there is a Jewish problem, a Jewish question. The Jewish question still exists. 1896, before World War I, World War II, 9/11. It would be foolish to deny it. It is a remnant of the Middle Ages, Spanish Inquisition, burning witches at the stake. There are really some dark times there, which civilized nations do not even yet seem to shake off, try as they will. They certainly showed a generous desire to do so when they emancipated us. The Jewish question exists wherever Jews live in perceptible numbers. Where it does not exist, it is carried by Jews in the course of their migrations. So I better read that again. The Jewish question exists wherever Jews live in perceptible numbers. Where it does not exist, it is carried by Jews in the course of their migrations. So when the Jews move into an area, anti-Semitism evolves. Now, nobody puts up neighborhood watch centers in neighborhoods unless they're kind of motivated to do so. Maybe there's some people breaking into the houses or cars or drug dealing. So then you start these signs popping up, neighborhood watch center, and more patrols. You call up the police and say, can you make some more rounds in the neighborhood? In other words, you increase the police efforts because there are some problems. So when these people were moving into another area, apparently welcomed many times according to my research, eventually anti-Semitism resulted. Now, why is that? We naturally moved to those places where we were not persecuted, and there our presence produced persecution. So it's in his words. This is the case in every country. It's in his words here. And will remain so even in those highly civilized, for instance, France, until the Jewish question finds a solution on the political basis. The unfortunate Jews are now carrying the seeds of anti-Semitism in England. They have already introduced it into America. So it didn't start here. Some Jews brought it here, according to Theodor Herzl. I believe that I understand anti-Semitism, which is really a highly complex movement. I consider it from a Jewish standpoint. Yet without fear or hatred, I believe that I can see what elements there are in it. A vulgar sport. Is anti-Semitism a vulgar sport? Of common trade, jealousy, of inherited prejudice, of religious intolerance, and also of pretended self-defense. I think the Jewish question is no more a social than a religious one, notwithstanding that it sometimes takes these and other forms. It is a national question, which can only be solved by making it a political world question to be discussed and settled by the civilized nations of the world in council. We are a people, one people, Theodor Herzl says, of the Jewish people. We have earnestly endeavored everywhere to merge ourselves into the social life of surrounding communities and to preserve the faith of our fathers. So when I'm reading this, I know some of the things he's saying are not true. They do not commingle with the other people. They chose to live in the ghettos. They do not want to intermarry. They do not want to accept Christianity. And Christianity throughout the world was not forced on the Chinese, the Buddhists, the Hindus, and many other peoples. And even in the Christianity, there were several variations. I realized there were problems, but there was the Protestants, the Baptists, the Methodists, the Lutherans, the Catholics, etc. So in many places, even in Spain, it wasn't the people practicing Judaism that were punished. It was the people that converted but were secretly practicing it, and something to do with their practice and their rituals, which apparently was Kabbalah. And many Kabbalists were accused of sorcery. Sorcery, of course, is witchcraft. So I think I'll take a look at a couple books here to show what the people who control our world have done so far. This is series number 7, early in my video making career, if you want to call it that, endeavor. Confessions of an Economic Hitman, John Perkins. He tells all the shocking inside story of how America really took over the world. And again, I have to point this out. It's not America. It's not we the people. It's somebody else controlling our banking systems and the politicians, Illuminati, Zionist, Freemasons, and many secret societies. Even President John Kennedy said so, and he said he was going to expose it just before he was assassinated. Abraham Lincoln said the United States was going to print its own money. He was assassinated. And according to this guy, many presidents all over the world were assassinated when they didn't go along with these international banksters. They hired economists and engineers to go around the world and convincing kings and prime ministers and leaders and presidents to borrow millions, billions of dollars, tearing up the countryside, putting in dams and power plants, destroying things everywhere, all in the name of industrial development. And these people were making a fortune behind them. This was not the American citizens. John Perkins was an American citizen. He saw what was going on, and he wrote this book. You talk about the Kabbalah, spiritual beings. Remote viewing. Do you know what remote viewing is? I got several book reviews I've done on remote viewing. The government puts people in trances. They leave their bodies. They can actually go and spy and see things like military bases in Russia, or maybe even in our living rooms on people that they suspect is a resistor to this global world order. We don't know where this is going to lead, but apparently they can even leave their bodies and possess another person's body. Take control of them. Imagine if they took control of a general and he's in a meeting, and they take control of that general's body and they reach in his pocket and they pull out the revolver and they start shooting people. Maybe they could push a button, a nuclear war. Do people believe this is real? Got big old fat books, many of them on different authors I made videos on. Was that series 11 or 10? Dion Fortune writes a book, Psychic Self-Defense. So what about the Kabbalah, sorcery, magic, spiritual beings, demons and beings? Why would Dion Fortune have to write a book? I made a video on this. 14, Psychic Self-Defense. Leonard Cole, 1970. What's the year of this book? 1988. 88. Leonard Cole. I think he's a retired military guy. Clouds of Secrecy. The Army's Germ Warfare Test Over Populated Areas. Series number 18. So I've been making videos since 2013. And you can see why I started when I read books like this. They were dumping all kinds of viruses and plague type stuff in the subway systems in New York. And we all know about the AIDS injected into people in LA, in New York, in Africa. Apparently the governments have treaties. They can't test these weapons on other countries, but they don't have any treaty that they can't test it on you or I. And they have been. Big thick books. I made videos on these. Even Leonard Horowitz, this big thick book. Emerging Viruses, AIDS and Ebola. Nature, accident, or intentional. He tells all. They created AIDS in laboratories. They went to Alaska twice to recover the Spanish flu, the one that wiped out a lot of people years ago. So why would the people who control our world, and who are the people who control our world? The Illuminati, Freemasons, Zionist, Jewish, bankster people. Why would they be doing this with our money? Is that a fair question? Is that an anti-Semitic question? Should that be illegal to talk about this stuff? Talk about these books? Look how thick it is. So much stuff in here. Actual documents from corporations. Evidence. This is Merck and Company. The organizational chain of command in the CIA's cover-up of military operation in Africa. So they were testing these things in Africa. CIA. Who controls the CIA? Theophis Society. Letters on Meditation. Series number... I don't see a number. But just in this book here, I made videos on this. Let's read a little sentence here. as may be imagined, the calling of either the devas or the elementals, these are beings. Letters on occult meditation. Remember, we're talking about the Kabbalah, talking about the six-pointed star on the Jewish flag. We're talking about all this magic type stuff. Calling the devas or the elementals can only be safely undertaken by one who has the power to utilize them wisely when called. So when you call forth these beings, you better be able to use the knowledge wisely, as you can see on the bottom there. As may be imagined, the calling of either the devas or the elementals can only be safely undertaken by one who has the power to utilize them wisely when called. There's some more on the top here. Hence, the mantra we have enumerated above are only put into the hands of those who are on the side of the constructed forces of the system. Do you understand the Kabbalah and this occult and this magic? The mantras. Stephen Greer of the Serious Disclosure, I'm sure you've heard of that, where he's made all those videos with interviews of people who have been involved in or cited UFOs or the military. Serious Disclosure Project, Steve Greer. He takes people to parks and beaches and they do these mantras, evocations, sayings like magic, abracadabra, hocus pocus, whatever they say, on beaches, and apparently they call forth these beings. And it says here in Letters on Occult Meditation, big thick book, series 19, I can see it on the book here. You can go watch my videos, you can go buy the books. This one's by Alice Bailey. Gets more interesting. Published by Lucas Publishing Company. See the bottom there? That was formerly Lucifer Publishing Company. Lucas also means light. Lucifer means light. Illuminati. So they're talking about these beings and mantras, like Stephen Greer taking people to the beaches and saying these mantras, these evocations, mantras, however you want to say it, and are only put into the hands of those who are on the side of the constructed forces of the system, or who can constructively control the destructive elements, bending them in line with the disintegrating forces that are themselves part of the great constructive scheme. Should anyone not thus capable be able to contact the devas, and through the use of mantras gather them to him, he would find that the force they carry would descend on him as a destructive one. Serious consequences might result in one or either of his bodies. So if you call these beings into your reality, remember, the Israeli flag has the six-pointed star, apparently involved with the Kabbalah, the Theophis, which it mentions, and magic and sorcery, and they can call these beings into existence, and these beings will kill you if you can't control them. And I've gone over book reviews on the Hawaiian kahunas, who apparently can imprison deceased spiritual entities, control them, and send them out to kill people. And apparently one of the ways they kill people in Hawaii, the kahunas, and you hear about Haiti and voodoo, all this stuff is real. And the symbol for this real is on the cover of this book and on the Israeli flag. Get it? Got it? And I'm showing what Theodor Herzl is showing as their attitude by reading the book. So another book I went over, made videos on, The Secrets of the Federal Reserve by Eustice Mullins. Talks all about this. Eustice Mullins was a highly respected journalist in Washington, D.C. Wrote a lot of books. Tells the whole story about these forces, these people, who brought us Israel today, controlling the Federal Reserve. And apparently there's plenty of evidence to show, not a conspiracy, not just a hearsay, but they have literally taken out of the United States economy, our banking system, our Federal Reserve, I'm going to say this, trillions of dollars in a short period of time. Can you imagine where we would be today if this did not happen? I know if you live in Alaska, you don't pay taxes. The government sends you a check because they make so much money on all the natural resources. So in the United States, if these outsiders weren't stealing us blind, we wouldn't have to work at all in the world. The government would be sending us checks because of the vast amount of wealth in the USA. And I'm confident that goes for Brazil and Venezuela. I've been paying attention to the Venezuelan problem, and clearly there's an embargo against Venezuela right now. I have a press release I just printed out. But apparently Venezuela has 14% of the world's reserves in oil. 14%. And apparently it's one of the major resources for gold and so much more. It's a beautiful nation. But apparently they don't have control of Venezuela. So there's an embargo, and they're cutting them off financially, which means they can't get any food and any tools or anything else. So Venezuela is suffering because these secret elites don't have control of those resources. If they get control, which they probably will, they will siphon off all the real wealth of Venezuela, like they're doing in the USA today, and probably the world, South Africa, Africa, everywhere. All right, keep going here. Back to the book in a minute. Murder by Injection, the story of the medical conspiracy against America. Another book by Eustice Mullins. From the 1900s, the Rockefellers, the Illuminati, Rothschilds, banksters, Zionists, Jewish elites, taking over the medical industry of the United States, pharmaceutical industry. What they did back then is they ridiculed holistic doctors and herbal medicines, calling it all quackery. They completely destroyed those industries. And who controls our world today? The pharmaceutical industry, the so-called quackery. They destroyed it so they could take control of it. And not too long ago, there were several holistic healers who were quite successful who mysteriously died. So they control all these huge hospital buildings. And of course, we have the big issue of insurance and all of this. And then all the toxins and pollutants putting in our food. So even if we do amass some money, when we get old with all the toxins and poisons in our environment, we're going to need to be hospitalized, and they will siphon off all that money. They don't help you with any benefits if you have any reserves. You've got to sell that stuff off first, use your stuff, and become poverty-stricken before you get the aid. Did you know that? They have forms you fill out. All right, back to the book in a minute. I just got this one in the mail today. And it's an important book I need to make a video on. 3 felonies a day. And I watch other people's videos. I want to give credit where credit is due. That's how I learn all this stuff, and I go look it up, and then I research it. I want to show that it's true or false. But I got the book. I need to read it. So apparently, according to this book, they have created so many laws that every one of us commits at least 3 felonies a day. Let's just say you're sitting home and you're trying to avoid it completely. So maybe you're committing 3 felonies a week, maybe 3 felonies a month. But if they want to target you and destroy you, they have so many laws. They got you. And of course, with all the surveillance systems, the iPhones, the Echo systems, the things that listen to you, your credit card usage, I don't know what you might be into, how much wine or beer or some kind of marijuana or whatever you might be into. They're watching you. They got you, unless you're a perfect person. I don't think any of us are perfect people. But 3 felonies a day just goes to show that anybody who is targeted, they can pin something on us. And apparently, if they can't, they can set people up. They can put porn on your computer or other things. Drugs and electromagnetic radiations, trances, they can make people do things. You see those people who were accused of shootings in schools? They look like zombies, and they even say, I don't remember anything. And they were under psychiatric care. A lot of questions. All right, one more thing. Even the local rags in my community. Look at the date, February 2019. This month, yesterday. I couldn't believe it when I seen it. I had to grab this. Between the anti-Semite speaker in MLK keynote says foes trashing her. So they really promote this anti-Semite thing. And also these other local rags that I pick up whenever I go anywhere. Appalachian state response to climate change warnings. So all this propaganda is just going on and on and on, and people are buying it. The ravages of Hurricane Florence, referencing clearly the effects of a changing climate are staring us in the face and wreaking havoc to our state. Of course, they don't mention all the electromagnetic transmission systems, HARP, microwaves, satellites, and the dumping of heavy metals and the sky spraying, which they've been doing for 20 plus years, and controlling the weather, which is admitted. They don't tell you that. So the propaganda goes on and on and on, and who is behind it? Who are these people into this Kabbalah? These mystery, secret society, religion organizations, and the divas and the elemental beings they can call. And these beings apparently are very dangerous and can kill people. And technologies to mesmerize, hypnotize, drug, and put people in trances and kill. Got a crazy world going on right now. I've said this before, and a couple of my friends mentioned it. It's like we're living in the Twilight Zone. So back to this book. Let's continue to pay attention to what Theodor Herzl said in 1896 with his plans to create the Jewish state before World War I and World War II, where Turkey was invaded and the Ottoman Empire destroyed, and they took control of the Middle East. Let's not forget about all the oil and wealth they got too. And then the entire destruction of the Middle East since 9/11, if you go look up on Yahoo image site, all those bombed buildings and water plants and vineyards and orchards and farmlands and bridges. I mean, it's a total destruction area all over the Middle East. And then they got plans for a greater Israel. I'll show you that before this video is over. All right, so now we see all that. Let me listen more here, or read more here. Let us listen here. What Theodor Herzl said. I get a little worn talking and talking. If you think it's easy, give it a try. We have honestly endeavored everywhere to merge ourselves in the social life of surrounding communities and to preserve the faith of our fathers. Preserve the faith of our fathers. Looks like that old Moloch is pleading. Father, where have I gone wrong? Toss me another sacrifice. All-seeing eye. I think he's got an all-seeing eye on his chest there. See it? See the all-seeing eye on his chest? Oh my. So they've been trying to preserve the faith of our fathers, according to Theodor Herzl. We are not permitted to do so. So wherever the Jews went for 2,000 years, and remember, according to Jeremiah in the Old Testament, it was the Lord that instructed the king of Babylon to go down and destroy Jerusalem and imprison all the Hebrew people, the ones they didn't kill, because they were worshiping Baal, B-A-A-L, which apparently is associated with Moloch. I've showed that in a previous video. We'll be looking at that stuff again and again and again until we get it. Hopefully, we get it. In vain, we are loyal patriots, our loyalty in some places running to extremes. In vain do we make the same sacrifices of life and property as our fellow citizens. In vain do we strive to increase the fame of our native land in science and art, and her wealth by trade and commerce. In countries where we have lived for centuries, we are still cried down as strangers, and often by those ancestors who were not yet domiciled in the land where Jews had already had experience of suffering. The majority may decide which are the strangers, for this, as indeed every point which arises in relation between nations, is a question of might. A question of might. So I guess might and power makes right. And a lot of people have that philosophy. Gold rules. The P who has the gold rules. This is their philosophy. So they have to gain control of all the weaponries, the CIA, the militaries, the governments, the leaders, and the money. And that's right, or might. I do not here surrender any portion of our prescriptive right when I make this statement merely in my own name as an individual. In the world as it is now, and for an indefinite period, wilt probably remain, might precedes right. It is useless, therefore, for us to be loyal patriots, as were the Huguenots who were forced to immigrate, if we could only be left in peace. But I think we shall not be left in peace. That's what he says here. On the bottom. But I think we shall not be left in peace. And there's more here not said. I'll say a piece of it. There's much more. But they did not have control of France until they brought about the revolution and had the king executed. They did not control Britain until they brought about a revolution and they had the king executed. And of course in America, a couple presidents, more than these two, but Lincoln and Kennedy are examples of being executed, assassinated. And according to John Perkins, financial terrorism, whatever that said, they've assassinated quite a few presidents and peoples, as we all know. Next page, page 9. Oppression and persecution cannot terminate us. No nation on earth can survive, has survived such struggles and suffering as we have gone through. Jew baiting has merely stripped off our weaklings, and the strong among us were invariably true to their race when persecution broke out against them. This attitude was most clearly apparent in the period immediately following the emancipation of the Jews. Those Jews who were advanced intellectually and materially entirely lost the feeling of belonging to their race. So the Jews who made a lot of money just wanted to be happy and be left alone, but apparently the people behind them did not want them to. Wherever our political well-being has lasted for any length of time, we have assimilated with our surroundings. I think this is not discreditable. Hence, the statesman who would wish to see a Jewish strain in his nation would have to provide for the duration of our political well-being, and even Bismarck could not do that, he says. For old prejudices against us still lie deep in the hearts of the people. And in Christianity, they do tell the story of the Sanhedrin, the leadership of the Jews back then, 2,000 years ago. We all know the story, having Jesus Christ crucified. He who would have proofs of this need only listen to the people where they speak with frankness and simplicity. Proverb and the fairy tale are both anti-Semitic. So I listened to one rabbi in one video the other day said, we've never believed in Jesus Christ. We never will believe in Jesus Christ. And if those Christians continue to try to believe in him, let it be on them. Something like that. That's what we're dealing with. This is an anti-Christian effort, this global world order. And it's fulfilling biblical prophecy, just like the prophecies prior to the coming of Jesus Christ. All that was prophesied and came along or fell out into play, however you want to say it. It happened exactly as it was supposed to according to prophecy. They were awaiting a Messiah. But the Messiah that came was Jesus from the spirit world who preached brotherly love. They wanted a king to help them destroy all their enemies and control the world. I'm not a religious theologian or student, but I can read and understand, and so can anybody else. A nation everywhere a great child, which can certainly be educated, but its education would, even in the most favorable circumstances, occupy such a vast amount of time that we could, as already mentioned, remove our difficulties by other means long before the process was accomplished. Assimilation, by which I understand not only the external conformity in dress, habits, custom, and language, so they did not want to assimilate and dress the same way as people, have the same habits as everybody else, the same customs as everybody else, the same language as everybody else, but also the identity of feeling and manner. Assimilation of Jews could be effected only by intermarriage. But the need for mixed marriages would have to be felt by the majority. Their mere recognition by law would not suffice. And the Jews are seriously opposed to intermarriage even today. There's a lot of political controversy about immigrating into Israel if you're not a pure-blood Jewish person. So they don't condone even with their children going to colleges and universities, they fight very hard to have their children not commingle with the other peoples. And of course, not all Jewish people. And not all countries. It's different levels of it. And sometimes when the problems arise, I mean, if you were a Jewish person, whose side are you going to take? And the same thing if they do bring about these enforcement of the Noahide laws, which apparently I'll show the document, that, and they say that Christianity is illegal, because they have declared that Jesus Christ was not the Messiah, so it's a false religion. You know, how many Christians are going to stand up and say no? Or will they go along with the pansexual, transgender, new religion of the people who will control the world, the Kabbalistic people, sorcerers, and even on the internet they have a new website called the Joy of Satanism. And then, of course, the statue of the devil in Oklahoma and Detroit, apparently in Arkansas, and all the other satanic symbols, even during the Super Bowl halftime show. There's many videos you can watch about this. It's going to take me quite a while to get anything significant done from this book, obviously more than one video. I just hope they don't shut my channel down because I'm talking about the truth, things that are in the news. So apparently when Trump won the presidency, here's something you can look up. Trump upset victory divinely sent to begin Messianic era. Rabbi Berger, Trump win appointed by Messiah. So these people are claiming Trump's presidency is part of the fulfillment of prophecy. Jewish prophecy says Nova Donald Trump herald arrival of. Trump upset victory divinely sent. Rabbi links President Trump to King David. Some rabbis in Israel believe Trump could be Messiah. Oh my, you think? So you can look this stuff up. Thousands of results there. Trump upset victory divinely sent to begin messianic process. Behold, I have given him for a witness to the peoples, a prince and a commander of the peoples. Isaiah 55.4. And we've already seen how obnoxious this man can be over and over. You know, would he do what they ask of him and enforce some secret Noahide laws? Apparently part of this Kabbalistic Israel Zionist global world order pursuit. Donald Trump's upset victory in the presidential race over Hillary Clinton, who is heavily favored in virtually all the pre-election polls. And I don't know if that's true, because I know most of the people I talked to thought she was insane. Larry Nichols on InfoWars and talking to Lisa Haven. He was officially one of the Clintons' handlers, and he was telling all. And then Pizzagate and so much more. They really think we're stupid. They just give us all this insane propaganda. So anyways, so they say Hillary was destined to win, seems to defy the laws of nature, reason, and sense. Several rabbis have an explanation, however. However, it was quite simply the will of God. As the rabbi who oversees the final resting place of King David on Mount Zion, Rabbi Yosef Berger is intimately connected to the spirituality of kingship. For him, it was clear what tipped the scales of favor of the Republican underdog. I have known for months that Donald Trump would win the election, Rabbi Berger told Breaking Israeli News. The Gematria, that's like tarot cards or divination or magic or witchcraft. Gematria, numerology, in his name is Messiah. He is connected to the messianic powers in what is happening right now. When he promised to move the American embassy to Jerusalem, he attached himself to the power of the Moshiach, which gave him the boost he needed. If you separate from Jerusalem, disaster will follow. So quite a few pages on this press release, if you want to go look it up. All right, here we got they're dedicating the, I've talked about these before in previous videos, but apparently they're already dedicating the altar to the temple 7 days until the dedication of the third temple. So apparently they're already getting ready for the third temple. So they haven't built King Solomon's temple yet, but they have the altar and all the other tools, and they're having the rituals, and they're saying the God or whatever sent President Donald Trump as the new Messiah. And that's the guy who was on TV saying, "You're fired and you're fired." You think he was trained for this whole program? Could he be a huge, crazed, insane military leader? And I was a Republican, by the way. I voted. I didn't want to vote for either one of them, but it was a matter of the worst of two evils. It was that of desperate of a situation why I went out to vote and voted for Donald Trump. But I don't think it really matters. They would have moved forward with their plans like a chess game. You know, chess games don't have just one move, but there's counter moves and counter moves. And so they had the move they wanted, and the people reacted as probably predicted. Decoding Satan. This website, 7 days until the dedication of the third temple. So it's called Decoding Satan. So you can go online and find these documents, these press releases. And this one is too much. Sanhedrin calls on President Trump to uphold the 7 Noahide laws. So if they're recognizing him as a Messiah, do you think he's going to uphold these laws they passed during the George Bush Sr. administration, 1991? If he's one of them, of course he will. And if he was studying the Kabbalah, something I found out today. Here's the 7 Noahide laws. Now, picture this. They declare Christianity a false religion. And apparently, breaking these laws is punishable possibly by beheading. The 7 Noahide laws. Do not deny God. Do not blaspheme God. They don't say Jesus there. Do not murder. Do not engage in illicit sexual relations. Does that mean homosexuality will be punishable? Do not steal. Do not eat from a live animal. Create legal system of justice. So the top two are pretty important because, like the rabbi said in a video I watched the other day, they've never recognized Jesus as God or the Savior. So that would be a crime to declare yourself a Christian. Yes? No. If you listen to the rabbis and the viciousness of the things they say, not me, but apparently you're not supposed to talk about this stuff. The Sanhedrin asked Putin and Trump to build the third temple in Jerusalem. Thus saith Hashem to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him, and to loose the loins of kings, and to open the doors before him, that the gates may not be shut. The Sanhedrin has requested that President-elect Donald Trump and the Russian President Putin work together to help rebuild the temple. With that said, and remembering the six-pointed star on the Jewish Israeli flag, and what I've read so far, let's look at some more pictures when I looked up Kabbalah on the Yahoo image site. Well, this looks like a Freemasonic lodge. Notice the Sephirot has the 2 columns, and the Freemasonic lodge, and the moon and the sun. Here's somebody has a Sephiroth tattooed on their arm or leg. Serious business. Apparently, like I said, there's several spheres. You can see the roots on the bottom, represented by the earth, and then the top with the sun's rays, apparently part of this connecting to some kind of deities or beings and other spheres. And the six-pointed star on the cover of this book. Just trying to understand their religion as described in the Encyclopedia Judaica I mentioned at the beginning of this video. Six-pointed star. That's a creepy picture. Is this the religion of the Noahide laws? I mentioned that they have plans for a greater Israel more than 100 years ago. So they had to have 911 to destroy these other countries. From the Iraqi Euphrates, even portion of Iran. So I guess we can see why they have to destroy Iran. There's been some press releases in the news or other websites that apparently Trump is starting to be more aggressive towards Iran. Hawkish is what the article said. So you can see it encompasses Syria needs to be destroyed. No wonder why they bombed all the buildings and destroyed everything. Down to the Egyptian Nile from the Iraqi Euphrates. The ancient kingdom. You can see why Turkey had to be destroyed during World War I and World War II. It controlled all that area under the Ottoman Empire. So you can go on Yahoo image site, put in Greater Israel, find these pictures, and click the links and read all about it. It's a nice sized country, if you think about it. They do have nuclear weapons, FYI. So you can find the pictures. You can see why they had to have 911. And of course, controlling the passageway through the Red Sea, the canal there, all that oil wealth and everything. It would be a formidable power in the world, without a doubt. So during World War I and World War II, they had to destroy Turkey's control of all the Middle East so they could build a greater Israel and the kingdom of Israel, Judea, and Zionism. So the Ottoman Empire in 1916, as you can see, controlled everything. And now, so that's what happens when you get 2 world wars and 911. You get the destruction of the entire Middle East. As per the plan, King David's empire, almost 1,000 years before Christ. They want to rebuild this kingdom. This is the guy who wrote the book I'm reading right now. Had part of the plans for this. There's Theodor Herzl. The area of the Jewish state stretches from the brooks of the Egypt to the Euphrates. Theodor Herzl, founding father of Zionism, the book I'm reading from right now. The book I've been reading for a couple days. A book I read completely years ago before I was making videos. So there's Theodor Herzl. There's the plan. He wrote this book in 1896. 6-pointed star on there. And we're talking about the Kabbalah, their cultural religion, whatever. They created ISIS, Al-Qaeda, mercenaries. They're destroying all the natives, the Arabs. They have plans. So this isn't me. These pictures are on Yahoo image site. Are we not allowed to talk about this? Will my channel be attacked for talking about this, to telling the truth, what's really going on? Controlling our government, controlling our politicians, putting President Donald Trump in the presidency. And they've controlled the presidency since Woodrow Wilson. All of them were put in there, part of this program for the last 100 years. There's no doubt about it. The petrodollar, you can see why they want to control all that oil producing area. You can understand why they're trying to destroy Venezuela today. Apparently, the United States is recognizing an unelected man as president. He's self-declaring himself president. Maybe they could go to war in Venezuela and Iran at the same time. And what if people in the United States reject all this? Will it be a bad day? Will they apprehend people? The Israel state expands outwards. Greater Israel, bigger than you think. Apparently, it's going in this map. It's going all the way to Afghanistan, Turkey, Yemen, Sudan, Libya. Jewish world order, control of the entire world from Jerusalem. I don't make up these pictures. I just look them up. And then they got this religion called the Kabbalah. Clearly, Kabbalah metaphors, Jewish mystical themes in ancient and modern thought. All this cultural, social conditioning and teaching with yoga and New Age and pansexualism and transgenderism. All this insanity going on in our world. What is this religion? It says on the top there, doesn't zoom in the way I want. Seat of divinity on top. Here they're using tarot cards on the Sephirot, the tree of life, the other dimensions. Microcosmic tree of life. Tarot cards. What is this teaching? Rosicrucian, Freemasonry, morals and dogma, all those stories, Kabbalah. Look at this being. Look at those beings on the top with devil's heads and wings. See the serpents, the veil. Crazy. All right, a few more pictures. I like doing the picture shows. But let's talk about this Moloch owl that's everywhere. Are you ready for the global world religion? Bohemian Grove, Alex Jones went in there, took this video. You can go online and watch it. Pretty spooky. See the big owl? The people are dressed up like they're in the KKK. A lot of our presidents and elites have been photographed here. This is real stuff. You can't make this up. You can look it up. Their sons and their daughters they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan. And even in Jeremiah on the Old Testament, I made a video on that recently, series 250. The Lord was punishing them. Had the king come down from Babylon to destroy Jerusalem, they were sacrificing their sons and daughters to Moloch and Baal. So I need to read more of the Old Testament. I need to know about this religion that's passing these Noahide laws. And if they declare that Jesus was a false savior, not God, whatever, that would be a crime if they enforce the Noahide laws. And apparently, according to my research, the punishment is by beheading. To blasphemy their God. Look at the all-seeing eye on this bull. And let's not forget Isis with the bull horns and the thing on her head from Egypt. So what is this ancient religion that God punished the Jews several times? I can think of at least 3, probably more. But when Moses guided the Hebrews out of Egypt, and he went up to Mount Sinai to talk to the burning bush god or whatever, he came down and they had gathered together all their gold and built a calf and were worshiping at a drunken orgy. And Moses was so angry, he smashed the tablets, had to go back up to the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights to get new ones. And then the Jews had to wander in the desert for 40 years as punishment. Then the second time I'm aware of, and there's probably more than these 3, but when the Lord spoke to Jeremiah, sent him down to Jerusalem, destroyed the second temple, killed a lot of Hebrews, took the rest into captivity. And the third time is when they destroyed the temple the third time after apparently crucifying Jesus Christ, and the Jews were dispersed all over the world, not to have a homeland for a couple thousand years. And the end of the prophecy says they will regain their homeland, rebuild the temple, and then comes Armageddon, the destruction of the world. And here we have Moloch in owl form or bull form again. Bohemian Grove and the bull everywhere. Dark secrets of the Bohemian Grove. So what is that 6-pointed star? And the menorah, that seems to be the new symbol during the Christmas holiday, really mean? Look at all these people going to their sacrifice, walking up the steps into the flames. Apparently, in my research years ago, and I have it in my file somewhere, but in Dominican Republic, they built this huge church, the Catholic Church did, but the top of it looks like a sacrificial Mayan pyramid on top. And Hillary and Bill Clinton went there. It was probably 2009 or something when I was doing my research. It was quite bizarre, the pictures I saw. But apparently inside the description was it was a long hallway, Dominican Republic, which is on the other half of the island of Haiti where they practice voodoo. And you walk down through this long inside corridor. On both sides are cells with holes for you can see through with bars. So apparently for imprisoning people through the length of the whole building. It was huge. And on top is a sacrificial temple. And according to the press release I read years ago, Hillary had tears in her eyes and said she couldn't wait to see that being used, the rituals taking place. It was obviously for sacrifices. I thought about this years ago. See, they're throwing children into the fire. Jeremiah in the Old Testament had Jerusalem destroyed for this, according to the Bible, Old Testament. Jeremiah, watch my video. I read the exact words. Bohemian Grove, the little owl on the dollar bill, the street plan of Washington, D.C. Apparently, this is a religion. Washington, D.C. street plan. Does that look like an owl to you? Looks like an owl to me. Bohemian Grove. Our politicians, our leaders, the elites, all these secret societies, the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill, the all-seeing eye on Moloch's chest. All I got to say is, oh my. Modern Moloch, human sacrifice in the Armstrong Church. You know, it's hard for me to come to grips with this, and I'm the one making the video. There's a picture of when Moses came down the mountain, smashing the tablets, the golden calf, and there's a golden calf in front of the Twin Towers, Wall Street. Is this their deity? This is one of the descriptions of the deity. It's got the Ankh around his neck, the Egyptian symbol. That's a T with a circle on top. The T means divine. The circle is a serpent, the divine serpent. See the all-seeing eye on his forehead? The sun's rays, many corporate logos have that. The dagger in his hand. Sabbath. Six-pointed star on the other side of this poster. The sabbatical demon. See the six-pointed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that 7 points on that one? And of course, a lot of people are doing the all-seeing eye symbol. Hollywood people, famous people, magazines everywhere. Super Bowl halftime show. Pictures of these symbols, the Crown, intelligence agencies for the UK, CIA, the all-seeing eye on the intelligence logo here for the UK. Just saw some more pictures here. Washington, D.C. again. And if you walk down the street in the Capitol, on those streets, you'll see on the lamp post, there'll be signs for directions to the subway entrances. And they have a picture of an owl like that on the sign on the lamppost. Apparently they're mocking us. On the dollar bill, you can find a little owl. Freemasonic lodges. Different organizations, Masonic lodges. And a picture you can find in the Bible when Moses came down the mountain and they were worshiping Moloch. I mean, what is this religion of the group of people who are going to be controlling our world? Is that a fair enough question? Why during the Sandy Hook shooting did this man, if you know anything about him, I don't want to say what I know, holding up a picture of the owl? Sandy Hook shooting, they're telling us what this is all about. They design buildings. If you go look at your big cities, you'll see the tops of the buildings look like giant pyramids or owls. Apparently this is a New Yorker magazine. They're telling us what all this is about. Quite bizarre. So, anyways, I apologize for not getting too much into this book, but you can be sure part 2 is coming right away. I'll continue reading from it and showing more pictures and more evidence that we need to wake up. These people who control our world are responsible for dumping chemicals in the sky, installing microwave transmitters, even launching, according to one document I have here, 20,000 satellites in space to transmit microwave signals, 5G. HARP transmitters, directed energy beams, gigantic laser beams, artificial intelligence computer systems monitoring us, facial recognition. Even got an email from the Orlando police. I used to live in Orlando. And saying that they were going to continue the facial recognition system. So all of our cities, which they will be forcing more and more people into the cities, will be 100% controlled systems, enclosed systems. Seems to be the plan. Destroying and banning people from living in the rural areas, apparently is part of the long-range plan. What do you think? You can leave me a thumbs up, leave a comment, give me your 2 cents. Thanks for watching my video. Rick Marrico reporting.